All right, we are live for the Thursday edition of the Morning Check-In. And as always, looking forward to connecting and sharing with you some things that caught my attention this morning and try to, I guess just dive deep down a couple potential rabbit holes, just highlighting more of how the recommended solution to a monetary phenomenon will end up pouring more fuel on the fire than it actually um, will solve the underlying problem. And it has to do with the temporary injections of cash in the form of pay increases, cash assistance happening globally, and then here in the US, universal basic allowances or income as it's being referenced in all of the the things happening in our country here. So I want to share with you some headlines and things of that nature caught my attention and just I guess lay the framework as to how, even though these policies and these initiatives are aimed at helping people, but the people that's receiving them don't realize that it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. It's going to spark a much more ferocious blaze than it actually is going to solve the problem that they're looking to address. So, yeah, I got maybe seven, eight different headlines to share with you guys, and of course, want to check in and find out what you're keeping your eyes on. There's always a slew of things to look at, but I just try to focus on things that will impact us directly and more importantly in our pockets. I mean, that's where this whole monetary phenomenon that I'm referring to has the most impact, and it's preservation for the future, purchasing power for today. And so hopefully I am able to accomplish that as always. So let me know in the chat if the audio is coming in good. Let me know if the visuals is okay so I can move forward. Don't want to be before you guys long this morning. Just want to check in. Somewhat of a late start, but trying to compile all these articles and things of that nature together, took some time. But here we are nevertheless. So let's dive into it, man. For those who are plugged in, regardless of where you're watching it, whether you're on Rumble or on YouTube, make sure you guys hit the thumbs up button as well as the check mark so that you'll be notified. And if you're on Rumble, make sure you guys download the app there so that you'll actually be notified when we go live so you can participate if you like. So I know, over here on YouTube, that's not the case. So you can actually subscribe, hit the bell notification and still not get notified. So, just, different agendas from different platforms. So definitely check in there. And if you guys also want to support the channel, any help is of use. Links in the description there, and the methods of which you can do such is available to you guys as well, if you feel so led to do that. So let's dive right in, man. Before I move forward, I want to make sure I big up my partners, colonialsmetalsgroup.com/RTD. And as you guys see on the screen here, this is the page beneath this video here, the link here, where you get a chance to actually fill out this form here, submit questions, and speak with the experts on how to protect, preserve, and to basically prepare for the changes that are ahead of us. And so based upon the things I want to share here, to me, it just reinforces the idea that, something has to give, and it's giving and bit by bit in certain places. But ultimately, everything that people worked hard for is at stake. And so it's never been more important, I believe, to actually know what you're doing and have a game plan as to how you can protect and preserve your retirement portfolio. So if you fill out this form here, you'll be contacted by some experts, and they can walk you through steps needed to set up a self-directed IRA where you can actually take your gold and silver as well as other assets and put it into a self-directed custodial account where you can actually control the outcome of the events that will impact your life. So if you guys are interested, feel free to click the link as well as give them a call and let them know Mike from RTD sent you, and you can actually just get your questions answered and put yourself in position to be amongst those that are awake and aware and actually taking some action to protect themselves, both themselves as well as their future posterity. So definitely check that out if you guys are interested. And also, just to highlight more of the case I'm pointing at here, yesterday I posted in the Telegram chat. And so for those who are not on Telegram, the link's in the description. Join us there where you get stuff like in real time as it's either presented to me or as I come across it. And literally yesterday, $1.1 trillion has been lost from the magnificent 10, magnificent 7, whatever it's going to be looked at in history books. And so just to highlight how, as of right now today, overall, the leading companies, the ones that just basically say the big companies in red right here are what this entire financial market hangs upon. And so as long as they're in the green, everybody feels good. But the moment there's a sell-off of something of epic proportions, that's when everybody's going to find out what they really own. And the screen, and when you look on your screen and you see something going in a direction you don't want to go in, that's when you know that game might be up. But then again, this is just some temporary action, because as I mentioned before this, in order to keep this thing going, there's going to be some liquidity brought into the system to prop it up. And I actually just saw a headline. Let me share something with you. And so as always, I intend on jumping into the nuts and bolts of what I'm trying to focus on. But as always, thoughts come and I got to run with them. So, and it just one of them things where to me, it becomes obvious over time because I call myself studying and stuff. But just to share with you from what's his name? 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪 on Liberty and Finance. Those guys over there had David Hunter on last night, and I did not have a chance to watch the actual interview. But one thing that stood out to me is something that I want to present to you guys, and it's just the very title of the video. So as you can see here, the title of the video, it says, Fed will issue 20 trillion in QE, says David Hunter. And he's a guy who spent 30, 40 years in the markets. And so he's considered a credible source. Whereas in myself, I'm just a guy with an opinion. But then again, once you study it long enough, it's not too hard to realize that, things aren't right here. But the Fed will issue 20 trillion in QE. And so the reason I mentioned that is because they're going to cut on the spigot, and the way they're going to disperse those funds moving forward, in my opinion, will be different than previous allocations. And so the best example of how they will do that is in the form of some type of universal approach. And that gets to the universal basic allowance. And we got a smidget of that 2 years ago when they injected $1,400 stimulus payments directly into people's accounts. And I've talked about this before, but the issues they face with the fact that there's a lot of people who don't have sufficient, they don't have access to a lot of people because they're the unbanked. And so in this next tranche of cash that will be dispersed, it's going to come in different forms, more modernized forms of payment. But then again, it's not going to be temporary. I believe it will be permanent. And the UBI program right now is being piloted throughout our country. There has been over 100 different pilots that you may not or may be aware of, but they're in a lot of metropolitan areas throughout our country, and they're doing it in different ways, and there's different types of metrics and measurements and stuff like that. But they're preparing the way for UBA, Universal Basic Allowance. And so I say allowance because, of course, everything that's given free comes with some stipulations on top of that, and we'll get into that. But real quick here, so right now we're witnessing what will be considered the upward trajectory of this next wave of consumer price increasing beyond what people are probably want to experience. And this goes back to a video that I did a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. But I was basically talking about, the second surge. And so the second surge is coming, and nothing has officially broken yet, but it's already trending upward based upon global M2. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And based upon all these programs that are being put in place now, which adds fuel to the fire or injects more currency into the system, which is ultimately chasing the same amount of goods, which will drive those prices of goods and services upward. So in Europe and around the world, the narrative of a cost of living crisis is what is being plastered across headlines outside this country. Here in the U.S., they don't use the term cost of living crisis just because it hasn't been a narrative that has been approved by the powers that be that's trying to control all this. So, point in case is we've witnessed a surge in M2 as a result of the pandemic. Let me just, real quick, I'm just everywhere. Let me give you some stats and some facts. And so let me share with you some things that I keep eyes on. And so here's a graph here. Let me share this with you on the screen here. But here is a graph of the global M2. And so if I were to go back here to the far left of the screen, where you can see right around my arrows at here, it was approximately in May of 2020, it was approximately 84 trillion in global M2, readily available cash and in accounts and in mutual funds and all that stuff parked in banks was in circulation. As a result of the events that took place with the health situation, we look at this surge here. Bam, we took off. Every government around the world expanded their monetary base, creating more currency. So this is a currency issue disguised as a cost of living crisis, but it's actually a currency debasement crisis, which is picking up. But you'll never hear that from mainstream. But as you can see here, it shot up in May. And after the first rounds of stimulus here in the U.S., adding to it as well, around May 21st of 2021, there was 100 trillion in circulation. And then it kind of went up around 103 trillion right around May of 2022. And then a QE around the world started, a QT around the world started. It dropped down significantly. We see this big dip here to under 100 trillion. But then incrementally throughout the world, and with countries we don't hear about, talk about much, policies have been implemented where currency has been put it in back out there, more debt. So as we see here, up into this current moment here, and this is as of this summer, we are above this red line here, meaning that there has been an uptick. Let me just show what I'm talking about. For the last, during the QE phase of what we've been witnessing here, it's been kind of in between that the range there. And then literally within the last couple of weeks, it has turned upward, meaning that we are now back towards $105 trillion globally out there. And this is just the beginning, because the video I just showed you where it says here, the Fed will issue 20 trillion in the next QE round. So when something breaks and it's time to get the money printer going, the Fed going to pump out 20 trillion. That's just the Federal Reserve. You got Bank of England, you have European Central Bank, you're going to have Australia Bank, you're going to have China. So mind you, we haven't seen nothing yet in relation to the amount of currency that will be created once something breaks. Okay, so that's just setting all this up. So the question is why? Why is this happening? Okay, it's a debt phenomenon that is beyond sustainable. There will be no more genuine growth because everybody's tapped out. Even the government's tapped out. Governments are bankrupt. Banks are insolvent. It's being exposed. Okay, so this is why they need to rebrand, restructure their current monetary system and move us into something different. Okay, but along the way, what they're doing is they're trying to paper it over with currency in the form of aid. And so here's an article that caught my attention that lets me know how distorted and out of balance the system is. And so from this article right here, this is something that is like comical, but then again, it just shows you the different tiers of society where you have the have-nots that are a part of the system, and then you have the have-nots. You have the people who have that are part of the system, then the have-nots that are the ones subjected to what I'm about to go into further with cash assistance and UBI. And so at the very top of the pinnacle, here we have King Charles. And so this headline here is what I want to touch on. King Charles monarchy gets a 60 million pay raise as the UK grapples with a cost of living crisis. And so it's even getting hard out here for a king. You know what I'm saying? His cost of living is going up. Everything is free for him, but they're going to raise his pay, his annual pay, out of all the wealth that he has and the wealth he gathers from all the lands and sovereign stuff he set up that still gets money from other nations is coming to him to where he needs a pay increase. But it's labeled as the cost of living crisis. So if it's impacting the monarchy to where they're raising his pay, what are they doing for everybody else? Well, little do people know. Let me share something else with you. that, this is just within the UK. So this is Mario's territory. And definitely he knows more about this than I do because he actually lives there. But let me share something with you that is not funny at all. Let me see if I can grab it real quick. Because I'm talking about a pay raise for the monarchy there. But inside of the UK, they're talking about, let me see if I can find it. So anyway, there's rumors and there's talks from their parliament about basically taxing the pensions over there a little bit more to cover some costs of some things. So I can't find the article, but I thought I posted on Telegram anyway. So yeah, they're talking about taxing pensions over there. While the king gets a pay raise, the citizens get taxed. Okay. So real sweet and simple here. Let me just share with you some things here because I want to get to my nitty gritty here. But just to give you an idea, it says some of the funds that will be given to the king will go to the final stages of a 10-year, $475 million resurfacing of Buckingham Palace, a project known now in its 8th year. But long story short, where do the funds come from? The sovereign grant, the mechanism used to fund royal spending, will rise from 86 million pounds or 110 million in 24-25 to around 132 million, 170 million. So the sovereign fund, which is used to fund his entire everything, his life, his entire family's funds, going back from everything that they've looted from the entire world, these assets are in there, is what they're using. They're upping that. It says funded by the taxpayer, the sovereign grant is used to support official duties of the monarch and other costs such as official travel, thousands of engagements, staff for working royals, and the maintenance of occupied palaces. So funded by the taxpayers. UK taxpayers fund the king's tax or pay raise. Okay, so that's just the king. So if the king is out here struggling, I imagine it must be concerning for everybody else. And sure enough, it is, because depending on where you look at, there's different narratives. So here we have what the cost of living crisis looks like around the world. So this is something that came out earlier this month, but once again, got swept under the radar. And so this came out initially in 2022, but updated 3 months ago in May. It says, while the global economy is predicted to have a soft landing, countries like Sudan are facing a cost of living catastrophe. So it goes through a lot of African countries talking about how bad inflation is there, how basically it's just ravishing people there. Cost of everything goes up. And sure. So what are the solutions for these programs here is to go to the very bottom. The solution is, what is the International Rescue Committee? It says our cash relief programs helps clients purchase basic necessities and regain control of their lives. Emergency cash assistance programs in places like Sudan, Somalia, Afghanistan, and Lebanon give families the power to choose how best to meet their own needs. So globally speaking, there's initiatives, especially the formerly colonized areas that are doing the worst. They are giving them cash assistance programs, basically taking more of the worthless currency that's already causing the problems, creating it, and giving it to them in the form of aid, which only pours more fuel on the fire, causing more of the prices that they need to buy the items of what they need to go up in price, pouring more fuel. So the king gets more fuel for the fire based upon taxpayer funds that will further drive up costs for the actual people working, but it's no problem. And so I'm like, okay, so what about the cost of living crisis here in the US? So I'm like, okay, let me just look and see what's brewing. And so, because as I mentioned to start this off with, the cost of living crisis is not a narrative that is accepted here. You won't find this cost of living crisis on none of the MBNC, CNBC, CNN, because that's not a narrative that they want people to even adapt into their into their psyche here, because it'll point towards the cause, which is, DC, Wall Street, everything else in between. And they rather, instead of using cost of inflation, cost of living crisis, they call it Bidenomics. So this is basically describing Bidenomics. But who gave us Bidenomics? Trump did on a campaign trail. The mainstream narrative that loves to have the good guy, bad guy. Bidenomics is the bad guy that's causing all the spooky problems. But they don't mention Trumponomics is what initially signed the first contract, signed the first stimulus package that got all this accelerated. So what happened with that narrative? But once again, is what they want what they want you to believe. So anyway, cost of living in the U.S. So it says here, the cost of living crisis in the U.S. is characterized by several factors: housing and childcare costs, food prices, homelessness, and financial insecurity, Social Security adjustments, and so COLA, Social Security and SSI benefits will see a 3.2% cost of living adjustment this year. 3.2%. Once again, government statistics, inflation is around that 3.1, whatever it is. Last they told us, but John Williams from Shadow Stacks is more like 9-10%, depending on what city you're in. According to the Chapwood Index, it could be 11, 12, 13, depending on what city you're in. So once again, cost COLA, we know that's a bunch of crap. But then again, for the retirees and people who rely upon that, I'm sure that number makes them feel like, oh, we're getting something. But they know it's not much. So anyway, so these are just things that are described under what will be Bidenomics. With the Bidenflation is what we use in the U.S. Okay, so how are they fighting that? Guaranteed basic income. So this came out yesterday. Guaranteed basic income in Fresno launches $500 a month for families chosen by a lottery. And so the king gets pay raises. Globally speaking, as a result of the cost of living crisis, there's cash assistance programs as well as other forms of self-injected currency into the people's hands, more fuel for the fire. And then here in the U.S., guaranteed basic income is really taking off now. And so this is just something that came out yesterday from Fresno. It says a year-long effort to launch an anti-poverty initiative. So giving extra 500 is labeled as anti-poverty. So within this article and a couple other articles I'm going to highlight real quickly, the narrative that they, meaning the writers, portray as like, because of the injustices of the financial differences between those who have and those who don't, it's the government and, these type of, programs that are very helpful because it helps provide dignity for the American worker who just doesn't have the opportunity to feed their families because of the injustice and inequality. And then they use race and they use all types of things to basically say that, these programs that are, if it said economic, one of them said economic freedom and another one says liberty. I'm like, huh? It's like, oh, but depending on how the package is wrapped up, and when it's given to somebody, it can look very humanitarian on the surface. Like, man, this is a great cause. And the idea sounds good, but then again, where is it coming from? And here's the thing about these programs here. But we weren't told that under Biden's watch, when he signed his signature under the American Rescue Plan, they allocated billions to fund all these pilots. So ultimately, in the 1,000 pages of that, whatever he signed with all that pork in between, there was a special program designed to allow states to allocate funds to test these pilots. So once again, taxpayer funds being used to test pilot initiatives that will become I would say mandatory, but something that will be utilized in the future after all this stuff unwinds. And so just to give you a quick little synopsis here. So guaranteed basic income in Fresno. Okay, this is what caught my attention initially. Okay, cool. So I was like, guaranteed basic income programs in the USA. Okay, how's that going? And so let me give you some rundown on what's actually happening here. So it says, let me give you the rundown here. So I just looked up to get the latest on what's happening. So I said, guaranteed basic income programs in the U.S. Where we been? What's going on? Guaranteed basic income programs, also known as guaranteed income or universal basic income programs, have been gaining traction across the U.S. in recent years. Prevalence and growth. There have been over 100 guaranteed income pilots that have launched in the United States since 2018. As of 2024, more than 30 guaranteed income pilots are being tracked across the country. So literally out of 100 since, last 6 years, 30 are being tracked specifically. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Then it talks about, the program structure. Here's some of the places. Cook County, Illinois, 3,200. Low income and middle income gets 500. Harris County gets 500. Sacramento gets 500. Rochester, New York, Ann Arbor, Michigan gets 530. And so it goes on and on and on. Okay. So here's some of the narratives. Where Guaranteed income programs are growing in the U.S. It goes on to some of the cities, gives you amounts, and it gives you more. 1,500 families living below 200% of the Federal Reserve poverty level is approximately $40,000 a month. And so it just basically paints up these narratives that really show how this type of stuff is needed. Like, having cash injected into people's pockets directly is needed because it helps them. But then again, I'm about to show you in a minute, it doesn't really help. It only furthers more of what is already a part of the problem for the average household budget in general. But real quick here's just another headcount. Banning guaranteed income programs undermines American values. Look at this narrative, like American values. Like, okay, so this article here talks about economic freedom, and it gives people, a chance to be sovereign, and it gives people a chance to choose. It gives people a chance to, all this stuff that, is touted as being like patriotic. Okay. But then again, the source of this is the Urban Institute, which is an institute designed and funded to promote stuff that is pro free stuff. Okay. So how did all this come about? Next question is, does the American Rescue Plan help fund UBI? I was curious. And then it says here, the American Rescue Plan has been used to fund several guaranteed income pilot programs across the U.S. It says several cities and counties are using the American Rescue Plan funds to implement guaranteed income pilots. Chicago's doing it with 5,000 families. Seattle, Montana, California, Mountain View, California, Minneapolis, Rochester, Harrison County, Ann Arbor, Cambridge. So basically the same cities that I showed right here, basically the same cities that I showed that are receiving these guaranteed basic income programs. These are the same programs that are funded by the government, meaning that if you pay taxes somehow, some way, 10 cents of what you pay probably go towards these programs. And then the rest of it is just a deficit spending, just the government issuing stuff and, some entity buying it. But my point is, the American Rescue Plan, which was designed to help reboot the economy, they use a little bit of that to basically test these programs here so that they can see how it works out for the future. Okay, so that is what the American Rescue Plan was actually used for. And then you have articles like 6 places giving free money to residents through guaranteed income programs. And so I'm thinking like, okay, a lot of this narrative has been used to talk about income, giving income. I'm thinking like, income, what does income mean now? If it's coming free, if you can get something for nothing, what is it actually income? And of course, like always, as the narrative shifts, the agendas change, they rewrite the definitions of things. And so I looked up, okay, what does income even mean today? So I looked up what does income mean? So I would assume what income means. But for some reason, nowadays, it doesn't mean what it used to mean. And I'll give you a definition of what income means according to Wikipedia as of today. I typed in income. This is what came up. Income, look at this. Income is the consumption and saving opportunity gained by an entity within a specified time frame, which is generally expressed in monetary terms. So they took something that should have been simple, sweet, and to the point, and they expanded it, elaborated on it, made it more philosophical in nature. And now I don't know what the heck it means. I don't know what it means. Maybe you do. But income is the consumption and saving opportunity. Consumption and saving is lumped in the word income. So once again, based upon this definition here, it'll lead a person to think that any of the things that's been put out nowadays could be something that falls under consumption and saving, because you're consuming, then also you're saving some. And if you get it within a specified time frame, which is generally expressed in monetary terms. So it's like, okay, to get a monthly allowance from the government so that I can save some and then also use it for consumption's sake is income, is how like somebody would try to rationalize this process now. So I'm like, okay, if that's 2024, let me go back and just look up Webster's dictionary from 1913. And the reason I use 1913 is just because of my favorite graph here. This is my favorite graph here, just highlighting how in 1913 the world and with our country changed because it was captured by a private centralized entity, i.e. the Federal Reserve. And since then, everything has been turned upside down, inside out, because our government has become subservient to this private bank here, and anything that they want and agendas usually goes. So since 1913, the word income has changed because now it's consumption and savings within a certain time frame. And so back to my point. So if you look up Webster's dictionary in 1913, type in the word income at the top here, it gives you some variety of options. But the one that is most relevant, that we would all agree is probably more correct when it comes to the word income. Number one, it says a coming in, entrance. Okay. Number two, that which is caused to enter. Okay. The third one, and this right here, like if I say this could be considered like hate speech, depending on who I say it around. But this one here says the gain which proceeds from labor. If that isn't straightforward, straight to the point, I don't know what the definition would be. The gain which proceeds from labor was the definition of income in 1913. We've come a long way, people, clearly. The gain which proceeds from labor. The gain which proceeds from labor. That's 6 words. Whereas in the 2024 definition, I'm not even count that. But you get my point. So nowadays, because of the environment we're in, it's acceptable, it is okay, and it's humanitarian. It's it's only natural. It's only right. It's us. It's you paying your fair share to make sure that everyone has an equal shot at receiving funds to help better them and improve their lives. Because this universal basic income or allowance, it's an allowance if it's given to you with no labor, or with labor, but then with stipulations to it. But it's not income. But given funds in this current day and age is the humanitarian way moving forward. And we haven't even seen anything yet. So for those who are just tuning in, our first 5 minutes, 10 minutes was showing you how what we just saw the year or two ago was the beginning of what is coming based upon these very activities, continuously creating to give with no stipulations, with no obvious and disclosed information on the repercussions of this free stuff is what is going to cause what I considered in a previous video that I reference here, the second surge. Like the second surge, which is going to be a result of activity like this, will end up being the reason why so many people, that other 98% of the population, will be caught off guard. And I'm not even done yet. So real quick, I got more stuff here, but so let me show you what the priority of a lot of the people who are participants in these type of programs are actually spending funds on. Because if everybody's hurting so bad, and in this country, we are in the land of opportunity. Everybody got a cell phone, 5G signal. Everybody got the latest shoes on. Everybody got an iPhone that they leasing. Everybody has a roof over their head for the most part, and they got internet. Now, what's in the fridge, what the house look like, whether you got nice clothes or not, that's the subject. But you got those 5 necessities that appear to be what Americans value. But then again, people who get free currency, you would think that they would improve their lives and better their situations, which some do. But based upon these 30 states, 30 cities that are being test piloted here, people are using this extra funds in the same manner that they use them stimulus checks. In one hand and out the other, and right into Amazon, right into Walmart, right into Jeff Bezos' pocket, right into Mark Zuckerberg's pocket, right into the billionaires' pockets. That is what these stimulus checks, the UBI programs are doing right now. And it's very deceiving. But then again, if you don't know better, I don't expect much different. But So yeah, let me just give you some stats here real quick, and I'm gonna cut it short because I can go on and on and on. But I'll end this highlighting what is happening around the world also in a new modernized version. So here we got the guaranteedincome.us. So this is a website from Stanford-based income lab, whatever, that tracks those 30 plus guaranteed income programs. So in the very start, I talked about there's 100 total, but there's 30 that's being tracked. This is the one that's tracking the 30. So here we have a breakdown of how the funds are being spent. So as we can see here, um, there are 8,495 participants out of the 30 cities that are being tracked. Here's a breakdown of what is actually being spent, and the funds vary. I'll share that with you in a minute. But the states that are the most liberalist and, of course, the most expensive, New York and California, those citizens get the most currency. So here's the breakdown, and it's very obvious where the funds go. The very first one, retail sales and services. So 36% of the funds provided to the individuals in this program spend it on retail and services, meaning stuff, consumption, things that aren't necessary for them sustaining or improving their lives on average. And then the next is food and groceries. So that right there would be ideal. But then think about this. You get the WIC program, which is already a major issue for the cost of goods within stores, because that's the government subsidizing food, which ultimately boosts prices up because retailers, manufacturers can actually, naturally increase prices incrementally because the government is funding a lot of programs for people. So you got the WIC doing one damage. Then you got this additional currency being put into circulation, which is being used also within the food industry. So prices will reflect that as well. So you see the doom loop of more currency, greater prices, needing more currency, bigger prices, more currency. So it's that doom loop that people don't realize that the result of this monetary phenomenon in the form of fiat debasement is what caused this. Food, groceries is second. Third, transport related expenses. So either paying for gas, paying for bus, paying for whatever. Next is housing and utilities. So I would assume food and housing would be the most ideal. Take care of your rent, take care of whatever else if you can, or pay it down or whatever, but that's what it is. Then next is financial transactions. So that's probably paying off credit cards, stuff like that. Next one is travel and leisure, which is 3.76, which is a lot lower than what I would anticipate. I would assume it would be higher because you get extra 1,000, you get extra 500, take a trip or two. Anyway, and then you got the smaller ones. You have healthcare, 2.1, miscellaneous, 1.47. Education is the very last one. People are not using this to better their knowledge bank or to take courses or to take, seminars and stuff like that. They're not spending that on that. Nope. It's on consumption. Shoes, clothes, phones, bags, food next, and everything else. So this is just, some of the things that this UBI is being used for as a test, but it's going to be rolled out and become a permanent. It won't be universal. It'll be guaranteed allowance based from the government, but it's going to come in the form of some type of CBDC, yada, yada, yada down the line. And so people say, no, it's not going to happen. No, whatever. It's already happening. Here's a good example of where it's happening at. Here we have Thailand announces a digital wallet start date. So August 1st in Thailand, eligible recipients of 10,000 THB bot digital wallet random scheme can start registering from August 1st. So literally you sign up, you download the app, you get if you're 16 years and older, you'll be ready to roll once it's all measures, whatever. But literally, they're given 10,000 bots, which is the equivalent of like a day. Let me see. There's a different article here, but let me see. So they're given 10,000 bot, which is the same equivalent for us on this side if we get an extra 500. And so let me share with you, I had a different article, but basically they over there are getting, so I forgot to show you guys, here's a list of cities and the amount that is being tested and the amount. So in Atlanta, there's 275 people receiving $500 for a year. Then we go to Los Angeles. There's 3,200 people receiving $1,000 for 1 year. In Los Angeles County, there's 1,198 people getting $1,000 for 3 years. So imagine $12,000 extra on top of what you do or don't have already. And we already saw that over 30 to 40% of the people use it on consumption items that are not necessities on average. And then you got every other state. So got 1,000 in West Hollywood. So California is the primary spot where everybody getting 1,000 just because California costs so much to live in. And then it goes on to other programs. Okay, so long story short, as you can see here, the average in the U.S. is about $500 a month for a year or two. This Thailand project is an economic boost program designed to kickstart the economy, and they're giving the equivalent of $500 for them, which for them is a lot more than what it is for us here. So, but this is in Thailand, and it's designed to boost the economy. So they're creating all those billions out of thin air and issuing it through a new rebranded form of currency to where you got to have it on your phone. That's the whole stipulation. So yeah, what is that? A centrally controlled digital currency. So yeah, every country's testing something. Every country has in the works something to use in that magnitude, and it's just a matter of how it's worked out, how it's rolled out, and what else. But yeah, so in the U.S., everything's right on track. So it doesn't really matter who's in office. The framework is being laid out. So next time your favorite president or candidate tell you what they're going to do, just remember the damage has been done, and they already got the solutions ready. But anyway, if you know better, you can do better. So once again, what's the solution to all this? Clearly, appreciate what you have now in the form of your income streams. And two, buy assets in the way that the billionaires buy assets that will be absorbent of all this liquidity that's going to be created here in the U.S. in USD terms. And then you will be a recipient of a lot of extra purchasing power. So, and I look at it in two forms. I have the preservation pile. I got my profit pile. Preservation pile is obvious. Insurance against the fiat currency itself, gold, silver. And speaking of gold and silver, what better way to take advantage of the manipulation other than to look at this current price action? And for those who realize it's important to have an insurance on your currency, you just get a dollar discount on silver. You get $1 off today. It's right now, it's $27.91 is the asking price. So literally, you got a little discount for those who recognize the importance of wealth preservation. Okay. And gold, of course. But when you go look at the profit side, okay, I'm protecting myself with insurance policy, but I also want to profit on the other side. And then that's when you get into the speculation side of things. Having a strategy on how to position yourself in what would be considered undervalued assets if and when that 20 trillion that David Hunter, I mentioned 10 trillion in a previous video, is basically saying just to kick things off, it's going to be an initial 10 trillion. He's saying 20. I don't know how high I can go from there, but all those trillions will find their way into things. You want to be positioned in things that are undervalued compared to where they will go as a result of everybody racing to try to get into them. And so, of course, you got to have a strategy there as well. So hopefully you guys have a strategy. And once again, this is all an experiment. This is one big monetary experiment on the profiting side because it's speculative. But on the insurance side, we got a history on our side. So it's like, okay, pick what you got to do. But anyway, with that being the case, that is all she wrote for today. Just thought I would come to you, share with you how more fuel is being poured on the fire. It's going to cause a second wave. The second wave will be something that will never take us back to anything we recognize in our lifetime, in my lifetime especially. Therefore, you want to be positioned as best you can according to the knowledge you have, and put the rest of it, all of it, in God's hands and let him do what he got to do. Because there will be winners and there will be losers. Unfortunately, there will be more losers than winners. You want to make sure you're on the winning side. And it starts with divine intervention, prayer, and being led by the Holy Spirit. But I can go down a rabbit hole with that as well. But anyway.